Welcome.
I'm Katie.
I am Garrett.
We don't have a Patreon of the week.
We don't.
This week.
Maybe next week.
Yeah. Join our fucking Patreon, guys, so that we can shout your name into the ether. God damn it.
So, very, very subtly asking for your Patreon support.
Yeah, I'm a very knife-forward tortellini today, I think.
This is like when, I'm trying to think what episode it was when it was the first episode we'd recorded since everything had come out, and you were like, yeah, it's weird, your threats worked. Everybody's been really nice.
Now I'm the threat.
Now Katie's the threatening one, and she's threatening you in a nice way, kind of, to join our Patreon.
Yeah.
And become a toe ring, an anklet, or a limbo champ.
Yeah.
See, I was quicker this time.
You were quicker this time.
I didn't have that.
We're getting there.
That buffering delay. So I'm going to start today's episode. How did you sleep last night, Katie? Sounds like well.
Yeah, so part of my issue lately especially has been just how fucking dark it's getting so early.
Yep. About to get worse.
But my problem with that isn't so much that it's like a seasonal affective thing, it's that my body's like, oh, it's dark out, time for bed.
Yep.
And it's 7:30.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I'm like, by like 8:30, I'm like, well, now I'm bored and out of things to do somehow.
Yes.
So I've been going to bed a little bit earlier, and then I wake up at like 1:30, mm-hmm. and I'm awake from like 1:30 to 3, and then I go back to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I slept. Did that answer your question?
It's also, we're having a weird bit of hot weather for November. It's like, feels like it's close to 80 today.
We're recording this before Thanksgiving. I know you guys are hearing this after Thanksgiving.
Oh yeah, there's a bit of a lag.
Because Garrett makes me plan ahead. And she's going on vacation. So we had to record a little bit in advance.
The face she made with that was just chef's kiss.
But yeah, so right now at least, hopefully by the time this comes out on December 1st or whatever the fuck, December 3rd.
I don't know.
I think.
I'm definitely not the one to ask. I didn't know what episode we were on.
It's definitely, I think, December 1st.
But it's trying to plan this out is also keeping track of two really three calendars, because we have like when our episodes come out, we have when we're recording them and when we're mixing them. So my brain juggling those three calendars of all the same things happening at different times and cycle is just, it doesn't work great for me mentally. My brain just doesn't work that way, so.
Which is part of why, like, a couple episodes ago we said that as soon as we record it, it yeets itself out of our brain. Yeah. We have no recollection of what we say.
No.
Until we hear it again on release day with all of you fine people. But,
we have really good memories.
Holy smokes. Right now it's very warm, and I think that's also contributing to the confusion my body is feeling. Yes. Because it's also like, it's warm enough that it's like, my body's like, oh, it's not time to hibernate.
Yep.
But it's dark enough that my body is like, it's time to hibernate. So I need to figure out something to do in the evenings. Like, I don't know, fucking read a book. Like, it's not like I need to like reinvent the wheel here.
Oh, we're going to talk about that too. And I think, I know when it's warm like this, like if I go for a walk, the sun is so much lower in the sky and it's not strong.
Yeah.
So it's also that weird winter sun with the warm weather is just, it's a weird time.
Yeah.
We're also coming up on midterm, so nobody is doing well.
Yep. I did see a tweet, I think I saw it on Instagram, but it said something like, I don't know who needs to hear this, but it is completely normal and healthy to eat anywhere between 3,000 and 76,000 calories a day in the week leading up to midterms. And I was like, thank goodness, because I had pizza twice this week.
I've had takeout 2 nights in a row, and I'm going out tonight to get something to eat.
Yeah, I'm definitely. I know you had it last night, but I'm definitely getting Indian food after this, I think.
I definitely had it last night. So today we are talking about ADHD and sleep, which, ironically, I slept badly last night. So, very topical. I'll be able to display a lot of these.
How did you sleep last night?
Badly. And it's the heat. I'm like, my body can't. I just put like all our winter stuff on the bed.
Yeah.
So that I'm throwing it off in a fit of rage.
Which I do love. I think I sleep better in the winter because I don't have a weighted blanket right now.
Yeah.
And like that feeling of being suffocated by my blankets is so nice.
When it's like the room is cool.
Depressed way.
And your blankets are just enough insulation. It's the best.
Like the weight of it, it's like my bed is hugging me and welcoming me home. All right, so anyway, you slept poorly last night.
I slept poorly. And it's funny because I never really thought of myself as somebody with sleep troubles until recently. I had a friend point out when I had COVID back in May, I couldn't sleep. So even though I was exhausted, just completely drained, couldn't sleep. And I was telling a friend of mine and she said, oh yeah, like you are very sensitive to sleep disruption. And I was like, well, now that you mention it, I guess I am.
How did your friend know this about you?
Just like conversationally, like we'll talk about, something would be going on. I'd be like, oh, I'm sleeping really badly, with this going on or whatever. And I've also been told that I sleep like a parakeet because you know how like when a parakeet at night, you have to cover the cage with like a blanket.
Yeah.
So that there's no light coming in. I have blackout curtains and sleep with an eye mask.
Okay.
Which we'll also talk about.
I thought you just meant that you screamed when you woke up every day.
I mean, there's also that factor, but the sun comes up and I just start screeching at it. That's another Rick and Morty episode. Every time the sun rises, it screams. That's me. So when I started looking into this, I just had no idea that it was this common. So adults and children with ADHD very commonly also have some kind of disordered sleep. So almost 3 out of 4 children and adolescents and up to 4 out of 5 adults with ADHD, according to chad.org, have some kind of disordered sleep. This is one of those like chicken and egg situations where, if you have sleep difficulties, the sleep deprivation symptoms cause a lot of ADHD symptoms. Yeah. And if you have ADHD, you frequently have trouble sleeping, which then exacerbates your symptoms, and then you're not sleeping. So it just turns into like this feedback loop of...
That's what my dentist was telling me about. My like regular cleaning, my dentist, I mentioned the podcast to him, and he was like, yeah, when kids are diagnosed now with ADHD, one of the first things to do, or when they're looking at that diagnosis, is actually to order a sleep study to see if they have... if they have any like sleep apnea episodes that are disrupting their sleep, and it can be, fixed with tonsil and adenoid removal surgery, or like maybe you just have sleep apnea and you need to sleep with a CPAP.
Right.
But he was like, because when you're sleep deprived, you get really hyperactive. Like think of any
for
time.
Kids, yes.
For kids. Yep. Anytime a kid is overtired, like if you've seen them at the park or something, their parents will be like, okay, well, it's time for a nap. Like when they start to get really hyper. Yeah. And that's their brain's reaction to the exhaustion.
Which is also what happens to us when we record on Fridays after work.
See episode 11.
We get real punchy. And then our significant others go, okay, you need to go take a nap. You're being the worst. Because yes, it does lead to significant functional impairment. So your mood, your attention, your behavior, and then ultimately like school, work, life, that it bleeds through to that.
Yeah.
So I did read that the DSM requires that all of the symptoms for ADHD are present by age 7. I couldn't verify that other places.
All I know is that because I was diagnosed in 2022, my GP asked me to what extent I had any symptoms of ADHD in childhood, because in order to be considered diagnosed as ADHD, with adult ADHD, you have to have had a presentation of symptoms in childhood. So for me, that was, I talked all the time in class.
And I think 7 is probably that's when I'm thinking back when I started noticing
I would say
symptoms.
Yeah, because that's like the first, like even in first grade when you're like 6,
you're a little kid.
Right, like it's kind of that transitional, this is how you sit at a desk and things like that, whereas once you're into like second and third grade, I think there is more of that expectation that you sit and you learn and you do X, Y, Z the way we tell you to. But also for me, I have also this weird thing because I sucked my thumb till I was 8.5, so I think I was using that as like a stimming, self-soothing thing.
Right.
And so it wasn't, I don't think that I really started exhibiting extreme like hyperactivity or inattentive behaviors until after I stopped sucking my thumb. So really, like, when I think back, it's like more 4th and 5th grade that I was like bugging.
I became a challenge
Personally, but
the one article that I read said that the requirement for the DSM is that the symptoms must be present by age 7, and sometimes the sleep disturbances that are associated with ADHD don't appear until a little bit later. They said on average about age 12.
Interesting.
Is when those start.
I never had an issue with sleeping until after I was involved in that situation that gave me PTSD. It was only after that I've had
which makes
really
sense
trouble with
that would cause disordered sleep.
Yeah, so I was the 1 in 4 or 1 in 5, whatever that number was, who didn't have an issue sleeping. Woo! Although my brother did, and my mom constantly like doesn't sleep.
Yes. They do consider it like the relationship between the two they kind of describe as like a bilateral comorbidity. So there's an increase, whichever one of those you have, there's an increase for the other one. And like we said, it's very reciprocal, like chicken and egg, like which one is going to cause which. And another way to think of it too is ADHD inherently is an issue with regulation. It's not so much your attention deficit, it's regulating your attention. So this is the same thing. It's a disorder of self-regulation of your circadian rhythm, of your like being overstimulated, being able to settle yourself, like motor activity. And it's a 24-hour disorder. It's not like you have ADHD while you're at work and then when you go home you don't have it anymore.
Yeah.
You've got it 24 hours a day, so of course it impacts sleep, which I read that and I was like, huh. How about that? Adding that to the list of,
When I do sleep better, I've noticed, especially recently, if I like get really good, genuine rest on the weekends and I'm not like running around everywhere, I do so much better that first half of the week at work.
Isn't it crazy?
Oh my God.
The impact. Yeah. So,
it's a little annoying, actually.
Makes me real mad. I love it, but I'm also mad about it.
Yeah.
Also, maintenance phase, which we mention a lot on this podcast because we both love.
Obsessed.
Yeah, it's a great podcast.
I will shit my pants if they ever acknowledge us.
Yes, agreed. Yeah. They did an episode on like sleep science. So I'm trying to stay away from like, I think sleep science, and one of the things they talked about is sometimes a little over the top, like there's a sleep crisis. Also, that's not going to help anyone sleep, by the way.
Right. And also,
it as a crisis.
What I remember from that episode in particular is like my body might only need 6 hours of sleep a night, whereas your body might need 9 hours of sleep a night, but that doesn't mean that I'm sleep deprived or that you have like narcolepsy or something.
And maybe you're going through something stressful, so you go through a period of time, you have a year that's really hectic and you need 9 hours of sleep during that year.
Right.
Or the summertime you need less sleep or more sleep. So and that was one of the things I did want to touch on. Like the amount of sleep people need is individual. And sometimes you need more sleep, sometimes you need less. It's kind of a fluid, fluctuating thing. So I think that's an important way to go into this episode is with that in mind. Mm-hmm. So common problems with sleep. Falling asleep is probably the most common. They call it delayed sleep phase syndrome or sleep onset insomnia. So having trouble turning off your brain. I know I personally can lay there. I got ruthlessly called out for it last night as I'm going to sleep, saying how exhausted I am, can hardly keep my eyes open. And I am laying there and I'm like, okay, so this weekend we have to do out loud. I start listing off things that we have to. I was like, I should really wash the pillows for the fall and winter. And my spouse was like, or you could just go to sleep. Because you're in bed trying to go to sleep. Stop this toxic productivity.
PK will do that with me, but he'll be like falling asleep and I just like, he'll start the conversation with me. So I'm like, okay, like he wants to chat for a few minutes because I have to, I don't know if you want to hear it, but my like fall asleep routine is like the opposite of what everybody, all the quote unquote experts
I can't wait to go through the sleep hygiene checklist in this episode. I'm already so excited based on what
So I do
just
3
said.
lines of Coke and no, I'm kidding.
I watch stressful TV shows.
Yeah, I watch Apocalypse Now, actually.
Yep.
And
have you seen the movie Panic Room with Jodie Foster? That is the most stressful movie I have watched, like, ever. Like, when I think back, I remember my mom and I watching it literally screaming at the TV. So that's when I think about stressful things to watch. Panic Room comes to mind. So I'm picturing Katie just doing Coke and watching Panic Room. And
doing Coke and watching Panic
Room.
Oh my God.
Having stressful political conversations all at the same time and then trying to go to sleep.
Yes. Yeah, trying to avoid topics at Thanksgiving is what
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what really calms me down.
Yeah. That's my self-soothing.
Look, they took away the thumb sucking, and now I don't know. I don't know what to do.
What else am I supposed to do?
What do I do with my hands?
Yes.
No, I even forgot what I was going to say.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
So prior to puberty, and this is from an Attitude Mag article on ADHD and sleep disturbances. 10 to 15% of children with ADHD have trouble getting to sleep, which is twice the rate found in children and adolescents who don't have ADHD. And that increases with age. So 50% of children with ADHD have difficulty falling asleep almost every night by age 12 and a half.
Wow.
By age 30, more than 70% of adults with ADHD report that they spend more than an hour trying to fall asleep at night. And it's definitely more pervasive with those with hyperactivity or combined ADHD than it is with inattentive, which makes sense.
Yes.
There's definitely a link between the hyperactivity and the poor sleep.
For sure.
Staying asleep is also an issue. So restlessness, light sleepers. I know as a kid, I was like, it's like I was kickboxing in my sleep, like just flailing all night.
Yeah, I was very mobile in my sleep, but I was also dead to the world. Like,
oh, you were a deep sleeper.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever really been a heavy sleeper. I'm definitely sensitive to like lights and sounds. Like if I hear something specifically, my dog's licking at night. You know how dogs like to do. R.I.P. to our old boy who passed away earlier this year, but you'd get everybody settled in. Our dogs sleep on our bed, which is like also a violation of the sleep hygiene Bible. But they sleep at the foot of the bed.
To be fair, they're small dogs.
They are
small.
It's not
like they're 3 German Shepherds.
No, they're tiny. They're just somehow taking up a lot of space for their size. And
as a person with 2 cats, I get it. I have a queen bed alone with 2 cats, and yet I don't have enough
close quarters. He would lay there and lick and just make these horrific noises, and it's like all I can hear. So yes, trouble staying asleep, sensitive to lights. Like I said, I sleep with an eye mask. They did a study, and where did I read about this? I don't have it documented in here. So data was collected from 281 consecutive patients between the ages of 10 to 17 who had been diagnosed with ADHD. There was 185 controls who did not have ADHD. So the findings in the study indicated that the rate of nightmares and like a lifetime nightmare disorder was more prevalent in girls, and snoring is more prevalent in boys. And disordered sleep disordered breathing is more common in boys and men than it is in women.
Like overall though, not
overall.
Just, yeah.
And nightmare disorder and occurrence is much higher just in the ADHD population in general.
Yeah.
Than
which
in
is
control
why
groups.
Remember my tip: you have to tell somebody about your nightmares so that doesn't come true. That's science.
Did I not mention the other takeaway from this study? Another issue is waking up and feeling rested and just having general fatigue.
I don't have that ever.
Right. So people with ADHD feeling tired or having difficulty waking up despite ample sleep. Like, there's nights where I was dead to the world. I slept great. I had a really heavy night's sleep, and I wake up and I'm like, what? What do you mean I have to get out of bed?
Oh, yeah. I take my time getting up in the morning. I like the quiet. I like my time to just have my coffee and gear up for the day. And yeah, that is something that I really treasure and I hold very dear.
That's going to come up in just a second here. So that's okay, because I have a note specifically about you. So more
You're
than
a hot mess.
more than 80% of adults with ADHD. This was I think a therapist reporting this, is some kind of clinician. More than 80% of adults with ADHD in my practice report multiple awakenings until about 4 a.m. and then they fall into the sleep of the dead, from which they have a difficulty. It's like extremely hard to wake themselves up and get out of bed, which I fall asleep into a deep sleep until about 1 a.m. And this is like almost every single night, 1 a.m. to about 4, I'm tossing and turning, and then I fall into an extremely heavy sleep at like 4 a.m. until usually whenever my alarm goes off.
Same. Yeah, I've had that pattern. I've noticed that exact pattern very recently, where that second sleep is like
deep.
Yeah, like you're raising the dead when I wake up to my alarm.
That's also when I'm dreaming the most.
I do have my wildest dreams at that point where whatever. I mean, I'm impregnated with Mitt Romney's embryo.
Yep, this is one that she texted me about first thing in the morning recently.
And then had to trick PK into marrying me quick before he found out that I was pregnant.
Yep.
And then he got mad at me for lying to him about
weird.
Getting implanted with Mitt Romney's embryo baby, and because he hated Mitt Romney.
Weird.
So something about not wanting a child spawned from somebody named Mittens. And
reasonable. Yeah, reasonable. Across the board. ADHD sleepers are This is the one that has a note for Katie. This is a direct quote that I read from this article. ADHD sleepers are commonly irritable, even combative, when roused before they are ready. Many of them say they are not alert or not fully alert until noon. So I have Katie being awoken from a nap.
I don't know what you're talking about.
That's never
happened. I am an angel.
And it's also very common for people with ADHD to really not wake up until the afternoon. Like, our brains are not, and there is some, we'll get into like the circadian rhythm, but it's not unusual for people with ADHD to really feel like their brains are able to function fully in the PM versus the AM. Which
I prefer morning work, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if I could clock out for the day at 1 p.m., I would be fine because I get the majority of my work done, my best work done in the morning when I'm freshly medicated.
I think as long as I can like ease into the day.
Yeah.
Like, as long as my morning's okay. Morning. Yeah. Right. If I can have a decent morning, I'm good for the morning.
All I need are these 5 things.
I just need these I'm a Furby. I think we've covered this.
Yes.
I just need these very specific set of circumstances. But it also makes sense why people have a hard time settling at night and falling asleep when their brains don't activate till the afternoon.
Yeah, that's true.
There's also a thing called intrusive sleep, which I didn't even know was a thing. It says that if there's someone with ADHD who loses interest in an activity, and the example they gave a lot was when you have like a student in the back of the classroom who just like falls out of their chair because they fell asleep. It's not so much that they were falling asleep, but it's frequently it's someone with ADHD who lost consciousness due to boredom, as opposed to falling asleep, which I was like, okay, but that's like narcolepsy, right? But it's not, because the brain waves are different. This intrusive sleep involves like a unique set, they were calling it theta brain waves, that is like unique to ADHD. So that was a weird little side quest, but I had not heard of before.
So
I won't, whatever this is, I probably won't have an answer to it.
I know. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding. So like 16-year-old child falls asleep in math class because they're bored.
They literally just like are so bored it makes them like unconscious. It causes like sudden extreme drowsiness, even to the point of falling asleep.
They said
they said the disengagement is so abrupt it induces sudden extreme drowsiness. And it's funny because I was like, should I even include this?
Oh my God, I have it. Well, this happens to me at work at least twice a month, where I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna die if I just sit here any longer.
Yes.
Like, actually, like, nodding, and it has nothing to do with not getting enough sleep the night before or whatever.
Bored.
Yeah, like, it is just like a topic or whatever that is just excruciatingly boring.
Yep.
Or, like, not, but it's just hitting me as boring that day.
Yep.
And, oh my fucking God.
Daytime.
Is that how you feel when I say stuff to you?
Is that why you fall asleep while I talk to you?
No, when I blow your mind on stuff.
Oh, yes. Yes. Welcome.
Oh, my God.
Daytime sleepiness, as we mentioned, is also very common. And a lot of that, I think, too, is like ADHD is just kind of an exhausting thing. Like, between that and anxiety, if my brain is literally running, like, I'm like the hamster on the wheel all day.
I'm the hamster that gets stuck on the wheel.
I was just going to say, like, then I lose my footing, and then I just get, like, carried by the wheel and then thrown from it by the end of the day. And something that can also contribute to this is just, like, you know, people medicating in the morning, and then in the afternoon, your meds dropping off, and then just being tired in the afternoon.
Yeah, that's why I have my meds set up the way I do, because I take that.
I take an
extended dose in the morning, extended release dose in the morning, and then I take Ritalin in the afternoon with my lunch. For that reason.
Yeah, and like, it really, you figure by the afternoon, any caffeine that you've had in the morning too has worn off. So afternoons are.
And I do try to not drink. I mean, I will get a soda if I'm really dragging ass, but I try not to drink coffee or anything in the afternoon because I don't want to end up dealing with, like, caffeine withdrawals at some point in my life.
Yeah, I really limit my coffee to the morning. It's unusual that I'll get, like, an afternoon coffee.
Yeah, only if I'm, like, I know I'm doing something, like going to a wedding or something where...
Oh, yeah, if I
need
have to be awake.
Yeah, I'm expecting myself to be doing more than what I normally do in the afternoon. Then I'll have coffee, but... I do try to limit that at least, but... And
I know, like, personally, like, depending on where I am in my, like, hormonal cycle, that afternoon drowsiness can be the worst.
Yeah.
Other sleep disturbances that were reported with kids, bedwetting, grinding teeth, clenching teeth, bruxism, those are all more common with ADHD, which I, like, same thing, like... that movement of your jaw when you're sleeping, which just doing that kind of
yeah. Actually, I must do that.
I clench.
Because my dentist, like, you know when they make you, they, like, put their hands on your jaw and they make you open and close your mouth? He's, like, says to me all the time, he's like, do you chew a lot of gum? And I was like, no, not really. Like,
yeah, those muscles on the outside of my jaw are like...
well, do you find that, like, when you wake up in the morning, your jaw is sore? No. And he's like, well, your muscles are way too developed for what they should be. So
I have ADHD and extreme talking.
Evidently. But yeah, I was like, it was the first time that I had heard that as a thing, but that makes sense. I must be doing that kind of... And I do find... when I'm stressed, I do kind of clench.
I'll sleep and clench my jaw.
Not very hard, I don't think, but I know my mom has to wear a bite guard now.
Yeah, which, like, I, to be honest, probably should, although the thought of that makes me want to gag. I definitely, like, when I'm stressed, I'll wake up with my teeth, like, completely clenched.
I don't notice it when I wake up, but... I also don't have any, right now, you know, knock on wood, I have all my teeth still. I don't have any crowns or anything. So I wonder if that'll change if I ever need a crown.
Right, like cracking a tooth from
Right, clenching. I would imagine that a ceramic, like, the reason your teeth are important is because they're better than an artificial thing that they can put in there. So.
Your mouth bones are better than the fake mouth bones that they give you.
Unless you're just going to have, like, steel chompers, like the Terminator, then...
That would look pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And sleepwalking. There's also a higher incidence of those.
PK will, I think he's told you.
Oh, the sleep talking?
Yeah, I have whole ass conversations in my sleep.
Yes, my spouse also sometimes talks or yells in their sleep. There was one time I was sound asleep.
First dating?
Yeah, it was early in our relationship, and he was sleeping like with his face facing mine. So he was sideways, I was facing straight forward, and just in his sleep yelled directly into my ear, and I woke up thinking I was dying. It was so frightening. And then I had like an adrenaline rush, and I couldn't get back to sleep because I had this adrenaline rush, and I was mad. And I think I actually woke
I would have
him
Chris
up.
Farley'd on that.
Yeah,
sure.
I woke him up to let him know that he screamed in his sleep into my face, and now I was mad about it.
That's fair.
Yeah. So those are the common issues that people have. These are the actual sleep disorders that are more common with ADHD. So there are associations between sleep disordered breathing, so like sleep apnea being an example, restless leg syndrome, circadian sleep disorders, insomnia, and narcolepsy. So sleep disordered breathing, a history of snoring or obstructive sleep apnea is associated with a twofold difference. So the odds of having ADHD is elevated. Let me say this again. A history of snoring or possible obstructive sleep apnea during childhood is associated with a twofold difference in the odds of ADHD diagnosis or symptoms. That's phrased in a very weird way.
Can you say it again?
A history of snoring or possible obstructive sleep apnea during childhood is associated with a twofold difference in the odds of ADHD diagnosis or symptoms, and elevated incidence of sleep disordered breathing is among individuals with ADHD.
Can you reword that so that it is less word soup?
Yeah, it's word soup, right? So I pulled this from an article, so this isn't one that I've written.
I'm having trouble processing that.
Right, I was like, da.
What did I just say?
I don't even know what that means. So there is definitely a very high instance, or a high overlap, I should say, between sleep disordered breathing, obstructive sleep apnea, ADHD. So one of the theories about this, which I thought was interesting, is sleep disordered breathing it creates like a hypoxic state for your brain where you don't have enough oxygen, which creates stress, which creates inflammation, and then causes you to wake up a bunch of times, which can alter your prefrontal cortex, which causes the ADHD deficits that you have with your prefrontal cortex to be more pronounced. So it definitely creates like a negative feedback loop when you have sleep apnea.
It becomes a way to make you permanently bad.
Oh yeah, I mean it's crazy. And then restless leg syndrome, which there's also like some other there's like an overlap with this where it's not just restless leg, but it's like a motor thing where you're having to move. That I don't have written down in here.
Cool.
But there's another diagnosis that's similar to this, similar to restless leg. There is evidence to suggest that up to 44% of individuals with ADHD have restless leg or a similar symptom. And they're saying up to 26% of people who have restless leg have ADHD or ADHD symptoms. So another one with like a very large overlap in the Venn diagram.
Yeah. Restless leg usually gets diagnosed when you're older, though, correct?
I don't know when that tends to be diagnosed. I would assume so.
I'm just thinking, like, everybody I know who has it is like over 50.
I only know old people. No, I really don't know. I'm not sure, like, when that gets diagnosed.
I meant, like, if you don't get diagnosed in your 20s with RLS.
Right. Or whatever this other motor thing is that I don't have the name for. So one of the thoughts about why there's this connection, shockingly, is a deficit of dopamine, which has been associated with both of those diagnoses. So I guess restless leg involves, like, disorders. There's like an iron deficiency that's related to ADHD and RLS. And I guess iron is part of that dopamine pathway, of the dopamine receptor issue, and I guess iron is a factor in that. So that iron deficiency is, I guess, linked to ADHD and RLS. So eat your greens.
Yeah, that was one of the things when we did our or at least when I did my research for the food episode we did, was that a lot of it was like how, a lot of those kind of links were, you can cure your ADHD with this diet.
Like ADHD diet.
And so it was just like, caution, listener, if you decide to Google that it can be very triggering.
Right, and it's like, you're never gonna...
It was just such a minefield, and like...
It's very like Jordan Peterson. Like,
yes.
You're not gonna solve anything by only eating red meat.
Yes.
And you're not gonna solve your ADHD by eating leafy greens.
Right.
But maybe you'll see a slight improvement in like this one little thing.
Right, and I think that there is something to be said for... Like, I know we talked about, like, avoiding artificial coloring in foods if possible, or at least limiting that. But, so, there's something to be said that, like, leafy greens have iron in them and are really high in iron and high in, other foods can be really high in magnesium and zinc and stuff. And those are helpful to your brain. Like, they help your brain work. So, like, there's something to be said for making sure that, like, you have a balanced diet and...
Right, because, like, generally you'll function better.
Correct.
It's not going to solve a diagnosis.
Right, exactly. So, like, it does make sense, but, also, if that's too much for you to worry about, just take a multivitamin, folks.
Oh, yeah, that too.
Like,
yeah, 100%.
That has plenty in there for you. You'll be fine.
Side note, we're going to be airing this, in the pits of... after the clocks have changed, but...
Yeah.
Also, just incorporating like a vitamin D supplement can help offset some of those season, because a lot of time it's a vitamin D deficiency causing those seasonal affective symptoms.
That
worsening.
Yeah, my doctor makes me take. He basically said that there's no world where I could take too much vitamin D.
Huh.
And even with my vitamin D supplement, my blood work is always on the low end of normal. I'm just over the line.
I am
minimum competency, baby.
It's back. Even for blood work.
I do it in all things.
Another sleep disorder, circadian rhythm sleep disorders. So when somebody has a problem kind of timing when they're supposed to be sleeping, when they're supposed to be waking up. Kind of like how we mentioned that delayed sleep phase syndrome, that falls under this circadian rhythm sleep disorder. So there was a 2013 study. I guess I don't know why this didn't occur to me. Like, melatonin is something that is naturally occurring in your brain, and the melatonin is what's regulating your circadian rhythm. So in people with ADHD, it was found that process of the melatonin starting to be released to like get your body prepared for sleep was delayed by 105 minutes compared to neurotypical people.
Wow,
which is like almost 2 hours. Yeah. So that would explain why there are so many people with ADHD that feel like night owls. So you've got your brain being more active later in the day. Yeah. You've got stimulant medication that sometimes can, if taken too late in the day, can impact your sleep. Plus just the nature of, especially somebody with like combined or with hyperactivity, that buzzing feeling. You've got all of those going on and your brain working, and then it's like 10:30 at night and you should be going to sleep, but you're still way active.
Yeah. Especially, and I think part of like what I was talking about in the beginning, where like it's dark out, so my brain is like, okay, time for bed. Part of that is also just like my masking of like, it's dark out, time to be quiet. Oh, yeah. So like also in my, like habitually speaking, my body is, or my brain is like, okay, well, it's not time to clean. It's not time to do all of the chores.
It's the evening. We're not supposed to be doing those things.
Correct. Right. So like I think it just occurred to me that might just be a masking thing.
Yeah. And I'm struggling with. They're also saying like those deficits in impulsivity control and those impulsive feelings can also affect your ability to settle down. So it causes like bedtime resistance.
Yeah.
So you have then somebody who's like, oh no, like no, I'm not ready for that yet. My brain is still like doing too much. And then it causes this delayed sleep onset. They're thinking that it's both a behavioral and a biological link between the two. They're also posing that ADHD, because of that evening preference, it's, then feeding that delay in melatonin.
So by taking melatonin, is that helping?
We'll get there. Okay. We'll talk about melatonin. My favorite of the supplements.
No, it's not.
Insomnia is also way more common in both kids and adults, which they're mostly linking to like bad sleep practices, lack of routine, especially around bedtime, which, I mean, you think about it, people with ADHD having a hard time with routines. Why would a bedtime routine or wake up routine be any different from those? They said that, let's see, so 73.3% of children and 66.8% of adults with ADHD struggling with insomnia.
Oh, okay.
The general population outside of ADHD for children will be 20 to 30% as opposed to 73%.
Wow.
And adults, the range for adults is wild. It is 6 to 50%. So I don't know if that has to do with like some people struggle with it sometimes, but not others. Like it comes and goes.
Right. Like, are they counting like parenthood where you're getting up with a baby has insomnia?
6 to 50% is just a wild range. But either way,
I guess if you cut, okay, so split the difference between 6% and 50%. Okay, 25% of adults.
And it's 66% with ADHD experiencing insomnia.
Wow, that is a wild difference.
Yeah. We've got narcolepsy. The link between the two is like not really understood. They're thinking that it could be, the poor sleep from narcolepsy feeding the inattention, and the difficulty with impulse control. And they both respond well to stimulant medication, both the narcolepsy and the ADHD. So they're just like not really sure still what happens. There's a lot of overlap that causes like misdiagnosis of both of them.
Yeah. It's real frustrating that dopamine and norepinephrine evidently go to regulate more than one thing.
And they also regulate, those two also regulate REM sleep and like impact your REM sleep. So they're thinking like that could also be a link, but that's still unknown, really, what the ultimate kind of brain connection is between those two things.
Right.
They just know that there's a lot of overlap. There's things that look similar. They're misdiagnosed. But the dysregulation of dopamine, they're saying noradrenaline. Mm-hmm. I don't know the difference between noradrenaline and norepinephrine, but they impact REM sleep.
I think they're I would say they're similar because it sounds like epinephrine and adrenaline. Mm-hmm. And epinephrine is used to stop an anaphylaxis reaction and open your airways. And adrenaline also opens your airways.
Which is probably you get a degree of that in the morning when you wake up then.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, like, the purpose of adrenaline is to flight in your fight or flight.
Right.
Or fight, I suppose.
Yeah.
But it gives you the increased oxygen to all your muscles and your...
Opens your blood vessels and...
So it makes sense.
Some sleep deprivation symptoms. So obviously in the short term, drowsiness.
Yeah.
Also, inability to concentrate and memory problems.
Yeah, well, fuck you.
I hate that information.
You're not my mom.
And then also less physical strength or ability to fight infections, which makes sense.
Yeah.
And in the long term, it increases your risk for depression and other mental illness, coexisting mental illness. Also stroke, asthma attack. And then, if you're like really intensely sleep deprived, things like driving.
Yeah, you can like
causing car accidents. Yeah, there was actually a list of like all of these different things that had happened that were all credited to sleep deprivation. Like Exxon, there was an oil rig crash that
Exxon Valdez.
Yeah, I think so. I think that was it.
Deprivation?
I don't want to like put that on hard terms because I I started making notes and I was like, I went down a complete side quest and I was like,
You didn't want to talk about the Exxon Valdez spill?
I just didn't want... That's so... You don't want to talk about the ducks?
Sleep. Think of all the Dawn dish soap.
But yeah, there's...
I think you're wrong about did an episode or two on the Exxon Valdez spill.
Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of, like, major accident-type events that have happened that they're attributing to lack of sleep. Plus, like, wasn't there... okay, so Tracy Morgan was injured in that accident with that truck. Yeah. I think it was a truck. I think it was a guy driving for, like, Walmart or something. I feel like
but
he
it was on his tour
deprived.
Bus.
Oh, yeah. But I think the
truck driver?
The truck driver was sleep deprived. I feel like that's what happened with that.
Don't they sell, like, fake speed and truck
to,
stops or whatever? Next to the Viagra pills?
Yeah, next to those really legitimate peen pills.
Yeah.
Are the stimulants to keep you awake.
Herbal supplements.
Herbal.
Make you just blow a massive load. Sorry, Mom. Sorry, Garrett's mom.
Oh my God. So coping. I'm just gonna shift right over to coping. We're gonna I guess we should also mention that I just really lost my
all that big deck energy. It was gonna come back and bite you.
That's a really loud noise. Did you hear that?
No, I was talking. I was listening to myself.
And my jaw hurts now. Sleep deprivation can also cause hallucinations and severe mood swings. So nothing good is coming from sleep deprivation. So it's funny that your dentist says that, because there was one thing that I read and they were suggesting that in addition to regular screening for ADHD or ADHD management, they need to be asking about how people are sleeping. Like, for example, if you're waking up a million times a night, maybe you need to have a sleep study, because something like a CPAP or a BiPAP could make a huge difference in how rested you're feeling.
Yeah.
Plus, sleep disturbances are obviously playing a role in emotional dysregulation. So treating sleep as, how do I want to phrase this? Making sleep a high priority is also going to help address these other comorbid things, because even if it's not going to fix them, maybe it's going to lessen the severity of the things that you're feeling. Because ultimately, like, if you're not getting sleep, that's definitely feeding things like depression. When you're tired,
for sure. And like you said, it's this negative feedback loop. Mm-hmm. So if you can, it's sort of the same thing with eating vegetables on the reg. Like, it's not going to cure it, but it'll certainly be able to increase your bandwidth and the size of your ADHD shelf to deal with anything else that, whether it makes you able to be more responsive to medication or more responsive to therapeutic interventions, just more able to manage your symptoms without pharmaceutical assistance, if that's your choice. It sets you up for more success if you can figure out how to work with your ADHD, I guess, induced
just
sleep
like
issues.
Any other things we've talked about on this, where there's definitely a lot of ways to handle something.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's like working with it instead of against it.
Yeah.
It's like, if you know that's an issue, find ways to work with it instead of self-sabotaging yourself like I do when I refuse to get in bed. One of the things they recommend is keeping a sleep log or a sleep journal to help see a pattern in issues that you have.
I did miss that when I had a Fitbit, and I switched to an Apple Watch. I did like the sleep feedback.
So they're saying it helps reinforce the need for good sleep hygiene. They also said the fitness watches are like hit or miss as far as accuracy goes. I will say personally, when I would wear my Fitbit to sleep, and I would wake up in the morning and be like, okay, like, I feel like I slept well. I feel pretty well rested. I would look at my fitness tracker and be like, oh my God, I slept terrible. This says I got an hour and a half of solid sleep. And then it was almost like a psychosomatic thing. Then I'm feeling tired because I'm like, I can't believe how badly I slept, how many times I woke up. So I did not find it to be more effective. I was reading, so they were saying to keep track of things like when you wake up, when you go to sleep, the amount of activity you got that day, if you were drinking, how many times you woke up, if you took naps, how long it took you to fall asleep. Okay, so Katie just rolled her eyes.
Who is reading this data
and like
compiling? Because
who wants to wake up in the morning and track all this stuff? So yeah, to me, I was reading that and I literally says, my note says, to be honest, in reading about all the things people track with this, I was exhausted. I'm not a journaler.
I am a journaler, and that
that's
makes
overwhelming.
Me want to, rip my fingernails off.
Yeah, it's too much. Like I read it and I was like,
and folks, I've got acrylics. They're expensive.
And I would still rip them off.
Yeah.
It was just, I read the list and I was like, that's a lot, and that would be a hard pass for me.
I feel like it's also, that list is the kind of thing where it's like like in anything with most things in my life, if they're like, okay, all you have to do is these 19 things, and then I just my eyes go fuzzy and I can't read the list, like I just immediately tune out.
I'm like skimming it and I'm like, well.
Yeah, like, oh, guess I don't qualify.
Yep, well, that won't work.
Moving on. New sheets it is.
Yeah. I personally thought it was ridiculous, and I think
insane.
Keeping a sleep journal like that is absurd.
Never mind the fact that, like, when I go to, like, I'll lay in bed, but then I'm in bed for a while before I fall asleep because I do all my poor sleep hygiene shit.
I can't wait to go through this list. I'm so excited. So we talked about the sleep journals, which I think is garbage. To me, that's on the same list as
a neurotypical person
licking stamps.
That list. Yeah.
And cutting out recipes from a magazine.
That's how you body double.
And bug out bag. Like, those are fake tips to me, along with the sleep journal.
No, a neurotypical person was like, all you have to do is write down these 35 things every day when you wake up, and then every time you're feeling tired, tell me what you ate right before you felt tired, and then tell me how much water you had to drink.
Yep.
And tell me what was in the water, and what source was that water? Was it public, municipal water? Did it have fluoride in it? How much of the fluoride? What percentage of the fluoride? Like, for fuck's sake.
Then you need to take all of this data and digitize it so that you can use it for anything instead of just flipping through it. Like, every bit of it was bad. It's just bad advice. What I do recommend. So obviously there's, like, medicinal ways to cope with this. You can get, like, prescription medications. I guess it depends on what type of sleep disturbance you're experiencing.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I use melatonin. I haven't asked for a prescription sleep aid because I don't think it's disruptive enough to my life.
I mean, think about Roseanne. She wouldn't have tweeted all of those anti-Semitic racist things if it wasn't for Ambien.
Is that what she blamed it on?
Yes. Personally, obviously if you have a severe enough sleep disorder to be that your doctor advises being medicated, do that. Personally, they kind of freak me out a little bit. I think sleep medications that's some scary shit sometimes.
Yeah, personally, just because of all those stories.
I'm like, if something happens, I want to be able to quickly wake up.
Yeah.
If my house is on fire, knock on wood.
That was my mom's thing when we were kids because she was a single mom. Like, she never drank around us. Mm-hmm. And when I was older, she said, like, because what if something happened to you and I had to take you to the hospital? Exactly. What would I do?
Yeah, my mom was the same way. Like, she hardly ever drank because it was like, if something happens suddenly, I need to be able to, like, respond to something.
Right. And so that was her thing.
Tracks.
Right. And she would even when she did have a drink, it would be like a glass of Franzia White Zin. Like,
picturing your mom with the like a shot glass of Franzia, just like sipping it really
Church
slowly.
Sips.
Body of Christ.
But yeah, no, like, she just, because of that, like, that fear, and I think especially, if I become a parent someday, that will completely change my whole perspective on having anything like alcohol or even like a melatonin. Not that I have any trouble waking up with melatonin on board, let me tell you.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm comfortable with melatonin, also knowing that it's like a natural thing that your brain generates itself. I know that it's just like I view melatonin as it's just making it a little bit easier for me to fall asleep, a little bit easier to stay asleep. It's like a very gentle push in the right direction as opposed to medically putting me out.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't take a melatonin and then try to drive across the country, but I wouldn't hesitate to go to the ER if I had taken a melatonin 3 hours prior or something like that either. Like,
right. Yeah, it's not going to make you do something wild. So the numbers they gave was like anywhere from 1 milligram can be effective, 10 milligrams could be effective.
So there's like it's not like the thing with the cannabinoid receptors that like ours are, we have fewer, but they're supercharged.
No. So this says they did a study on melatonin. They kind of like monitored patients for 3.5 years, and 3.5 years later, it was still helpful for them. It helped improve mood. In kids, it was helping improve behavior. And they also noted that when people tried to stop taking the melatonin, 92% of them had symptoms return. That was actually in there was a YouTube video talking about the overlooked connection between ADHD and sleep.
But non-habit forming, otherwise, other than like, hey, this helps me sleep, so I'm going to keep taking it.
Yeah, no, I didn't read anything about it being habit forming. Everything I read was like, this is a legitimate thing to help people improve these sleep disturbances that they're
having.
Even
at a higher dose?
They didn't mention any. I mean, they were only talking 1 to 10. I feel like I need more
for it to work for me.
So I have like the
it makes me
gummies.
Nervous because I don't want to.
Yeah, so I mean, like full disclosure, I probably started taking melatonin every day during the pandemic because I was having a very hard time sleeping. And they tell you like the dosage I think is 2 gummies. I take like on normal nights take 1 gummy, which I think is literally like 2 milligrams of melatonin. And it's like just enough I don't ever sleep. It's not like it's making me sleep really heavy. I'm still like going through my normal bullshit of like falling asleep, waking up, but I have an easier time getting back to sleep and I have an easier time falling asleep. So my attitude is like, it's enough to take the edge off where I'm feeling a little bit better and I'm not groggy in the morning.
Yeah.
But on weekends I'll take, like 2 of them to help me catch up. Not that was effective last night.
Yeah. I take like 2 to 3 gummies a night, but each one of my gummies is 5 milligrams. So I'm taking up to like 15 milligrams depending, but.
Yeah, they didn't mention anything.
I did last night with wine, and I'm here.
So did they have anything about mixing it with alcohol? Because I'm finding that to be way more effective.
Maybe I drank a bottle of wine and live tweeted the Murdoch Murder Show. I don't know. You'll have to check out our Twitter to see all my hot takes.
Oh, my God. Well, this has actually turned out to be longer than I was expecting. And it's funny because, like, every week we'll like touch base right before we record, and we're like, I'm really excited. I have way more than I thought I would. I literally say it every single time I Google these things because I just fall down these rabbit holes. So we're going to pick it up next week. We'll talk about some sleep hygiene tips, which I'm sure will be not at all triggering for Katie. And
whatever.
And, well, yeah, I guess mostly sleep hygiene is what we'll talk about next week. So we talked about sleep disruptions, and this week we'll talk about sleep tips and how to improve sleep next week.
All right. Yeah, that sounds good, guys. In the meantime, let us know your favorite sleep hacks, sleep habits.
Oh, yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah, I would be interested to hear like what other people do to improve their rest. Or as we jokingly call it at my house, your winks.
That sounds gross.
No, like, so my spouse fell asleep on the couch one day, and I said something about, like, him falling asleep, if he had gotten something about getting winks. Not a wink, that's what he said. I didn't get a wink of sleep. I was like, it looks like you got a couple of winks, because you were asleep for, like, a half hour. So there's a running joke in our house about winks. So if you have any good wink tips, let us
Like the Teletubbies, wasn't one of them?
Tinky Winky.
Tinky Winky, there we go. Mm-hmm. Now sponsored by the Bars Ankle High.
You want to talk about Instagram filters or Snapchat filters? Give me one where I can put my face on a Teletubby.
I'm gonna find it. You're gonna.
The look on Katie's face right now, she just got a rush of dopamine, like, I'm gonna find it.
You're gonna be on that fucking reel. You wait.
You're gonna be on a fucking Teletubby. Oh, I can't wait. So I'll tune in next week for wink tips and Teletubbies. And remember, Be kind because sleep is important.
And maybe pop a melatonin because the bar is ankle high.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be here next Thursday with a brand new episode to delight your brain juices. In the meantime, the best way to support us is to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast streaming platform. You can keep up with us during the week on Instagram and Facebook at The Bar is Ankle High and on Twitter at Ankle High Pod. If you want even more ankle high hot takes in your life and have a few dollars to spare, consider joining our Patreon at patreon.com/thebarisAnkleHigh. We post bonus episodes there full of our karaoke attempts, Am I the Asshole discussions, and wondering how we even managed to survive this long. Patreon subscribers also get exclusive access to our secret Patreon-only Facebook group and get added to our close friends list on Instagram. Until next week, remember to be kind to yourself because the bar is ankle high.